Alrighty guys, it's Gus from Pharmacy Down Under. Just going to make a really quick video. I have a lot of students DMing me on Instagram and on LinkedIn asking about, how do I tackle the AMH? How do I approach the AMH? How do I, get ready for my written and oral exam coming up in a few weeks? The AMH is giant, it's massive, it's a Goliath. So today, hopefully we're going to break it down. We're going to tell you how to use the AMH effectively. And at the same time, I'm going to teach you some really, really key tricks that I wish I did when I was an intern to really make the most of the AMH. All right, so I have my AMH here and I get it. It can be really overwhelming. It's a big book full of multiple chapters covering every single monograph or every single medicine available in Australia, both on the PBS and off the PBS as well. So I can understand it's quite a lot, it's quite daunting, it's quite a lot of information to take. And a lot of people spread this myth that you have to read the AMH from cover to cover multiple times, or you need to actually memorize the entire AMH from cover to cover, which is literally impossible. So I was under that belief when I was an intern, and I made that mistake of sort of doubling down on reading it and absorbing it and memorizing it as much as possible. Whilst I do think it's a good thing to memorize big amounts of it, but from cover to cover or every single minute detail, it's a bit of a waste of time. So I don't suggest for any of the future interns to do that approach. There are much, much better ways to really approach the AMH. So my copy is a little bit an ancient one, and it's the one I used back in my intern. So it has all of the annotations and tags on all three sides of the AMH, and I've made like handwritten notes throughout the text. I'll go through them with you in terms of how to really take advantage of this book. It's very valuable. It's tons of content in there, tons of clinical knowledge and tons of relevant exam knowledge that you need to know for your oral and especially your written as well. All right, so for some of you, if you don't know what AMH is, now that's a different problem altogether, but I'll just break it down for you. The AMH stands for the Australian Medicines Handbook, and essentially it's the core text for the majority of pharmacy students, pharmacy interns, and pharmacists in general as a main reference guide for all things, medicines in Australia, where it comes to, indications, drug classes, dosing, counseling points, and monitoring points as well. And I believe it's actually instrumental in terms of guiding you in the right path in terms of your internship in regards to really setting yourself in a nice foundation when it comes to clinical knowledge. And it's up to you to develop those skills into more sort of digestible knowledge for the regular public to consume. Now, I think it's a really, really important text, and I do recommend you make sure that your workplace has one, which legally it should, but make sure you know where it is and how to access it straight away, both either digitally or hard copy. Hard copy is really beneficial personally for me for study, as I was more of a traditional studier in the sense that I needed to, write down notes, I needed to sticky tag, highlight, make comments all over the books. That was just the best way for me to absorb the information. Everyone's a little bit different, especially nowadays. If you do it electronically, that's also fine, as long as you're able to memorize, and not just memorize, but really, absorb and understand the content that you're delivering. Now, in terms of what the AMH has inside, I'll show on the screen the digital version of what sort of a monograph or like a typical medicine is. But essentially the whole idea is that the actual AMH is sort of like an encyclopedia of sorts when it comes to medicines. So it does break them down into different sort of body systems, whether it be cardiovascular, anti-infective, respiratory, gastrointestinal, and it goes on throughout the whole body. And it breaks down into major class groups, where it'd be like your ACE inhibitors, your sartans, your diuretics, etc. And also breaks down underneath each medical condition. So for example, your cardiovascular section will be broken down into like heart failure, hypertension, dyslipidemia, things like that. So it does that for every single body part in the body. Now, the best way to take advantage of it is essentially not memorizing, or rather when you're approaching a monograph, not to think I need to memorize each individual monograph for each subversion of a medicine. So for example, like the ACE inhibitor example, you have your perindopril, captopril. You don't necessarily need to memorize each individual monograph for each individual drug as an independent thing. You got to consider it as a whole group. So for example, if you're approaching an ACE inhibitor study session, for example, or you're studying cardiovascular, isolate drug classes. So for example, focus on ACE inhibitors for maybe 1 to 2 weeks. I suggest going through the overall general section of ACE inhibitors, learning the general indications for them. The mechanism of action is also very, very handy as well. and side effects, counseling points, and monitoring points. So I usually like to follow the system called SIDSCIM. So it's an acronym for CIDCM, which is class, indication, dose, counseling, and monitoring. Now, by following that structure, I believe that's actually the best way to really absorb the content, especially if you're going through pages and pages worth of drugs. Now, I think sticking to that example of the cardiovascular system, I do believe that by using the SIDSCIM formulation, you can clearly and easily sort of break down that area. So you can break down the class as an ACE inhibitor, and then you go to indication. So you can say for hypertension, for example, and you can list off all the other indications as well. And then in terms of the dosage, this is where you can sort of break down the individual types of prils. So you have your perindopril, your captopril, you have lisinopril, you have all of the ACEs. You can list them individually, and then you can specify their individual dosages, just for your own reference and your knowledge as well. Now, the most important one would be the second C, which is the counseling points. Counseling points are what makes pharmacy pharmacy. It's our ability to understand and transform pharmacological content, university level pharmacy content and chemistry content into something that it can be delivered to any one of your patients in the community or in hospital pharmacy clearly and effectively without using jargon. So that's going to be really important, especially for the oral exam when it comes to the sort of the OSCE section where you're role playing in the pharmacy scenario. When you're delivering that content or the answer or the counseling to the patient, you can't be using the jargon that's in here. You need to actually develop those skills, which I do through my classes in terms of being able to be a clear communicator and an effective communicator. So both in the exam and of course in your career as well. So now we're talking about the nitty gritty part, the part where we're all here for. How do we prep for the actual written and oral exam using this guy? Okay, so the way to use this, it's very, very easy. Now, if you have one at home, I have a very old one, as you can see, but if you have the 2024 one, absolutely go for it. My one's on the way, so I just didn't have time to make it with this, but generally speaking, really important, open it up straight away. Now you'll notice on the side, it has all of the body systems separated that way. Now, I've gone through the effort of individually tagging each individual one and actually writing the name of the body system on there for my own quick reference, because in the oral exam and the written exam, you don't have time to flick through a page or through a table of contents. It's quickly, have a quick look at the green colors, gastrointestinal, I know to flick it to that page immediately. And that was a big, big help. It's something very, very small, but that made a huge difference for me because it was actually enabling me to sort of, at a glance, pick and choose a page that I want to isolate, turn to it, and all the information that's relevant is there. Now, another thing I suggest is to take advantage of the real estate you have on the top and on the bottom of the book, right? Now, I don't suggest going too crazy like I have, but this worked for me. Again, it depends on how you study. It depends on how you're able to recall information. Now, the only things I've ever tagged up here or on the bottom would be things that would I know that would be examined. So, for example, all your TDM medicines or your monitoring medicines, close monitoring meds, all values and conversions and blood tests, electrolyte readings that will be examined in the actual oral and written, I've referenced here, so I could just quickly flip to it so I don't get flustered in the moment of the exam, because I know it gets stressful, so that's okay. But I think that's the most important thing. Now, another thing that I think is really undervalued is understanding how much of the AMH should make up your study, or how much you should be relying on the AMH to give you the answers that you want and the results that you prefer, that you need to get registered. Now, I've seen a lot of students, even in my cohort and after my cohort, and of course way before, have all made this error in the sense that they use the AMH as the answer, which is not how you're meant to be doing it. You're meant to be using the AMH as a reference. So what a reference means is that you get and extract certain information from the AMH, whether it be a mechanism of action, a counseling point, a dosage milligram that you need to figure out, or a dosage scheme. And then you use that in conjunction with your other resources. So another resource would be your APF, or it'd be your drug interactions through EMIMS. That's a really, really important resource, especially when we're talking about your oral exam. Because the oral exam, they will be asking you for more in-depth solutions, not just listing off, indications and dosages, but actually finding, drug interactions, clinical interventions, finding a solution to a problem and delivering not just the problem, but an actual solution and a recommendation and counseling for that recommended product or item afterwards. So it's about the whole complete package. It's really testing you about not just how well you can memorize something, because anyone can memorize anything if you give them enough time. It's really about telling you, how can you be the best pharmacist you can be? Can you be competent as a pharmacist, not just in serving customers and serving the public, but being someone that can be a confident reference for any health or any medical related help. So if your patient comes up to you and, they're asking you a medical question and generally, don't have a really confident grasp on that topic area, you should be confident to say, look, I need to quickly check my references and know how to use your references effectively to actually educate and inform the patient suitably without causing any sort of confusion or any misunderstandings or anything like that that could detrimentally affect the health down the line. So that's the ultimate goal of the AMH. That's the ultimate goal of the oral and written exam in general. So ultimately, what I suggest we do is the AMH is something to be used as a friend. It's a buddy. It's a buddy in your internship, so to speak. It's there to guide you. It's there to help you break down and analyze just how each medicine works on a very, very basic level. So it's super in-depth, even though it's quite thick. It's just because it's covering all the medicines doesn't mean that you're going to be examined on all of them. Generally speaking, the exam is there just to see if you're competent in the sense that you're aware of the common medicines being used, how do you deal with the regular medicines usage from the day-to-day, and to be able to solve small problems and problem-solving techniques throughout your pharmacy career. Now, I know this is a very, very quick video, so I wasn't able to go into an amazing amount of depth, to be honest with you. I do have sessions that I do run with a lot of pharmacy students and even pharmacy interns and registered pharmacists as well, in terms of just refresher guides, career development, things like that as well. So if you're in that area and, if you're in your internship and the exams are coming around the corner, I'm more than happy to help, have a chat. We can go in a little bit more depth, take our own time and work through the AMH together or work through some sort of study plan, exam scenarios. That's what we're all about here at Pharmacy Down Under. The whole point of this is to form a community for all pharmacists, in the early on in the career, from the uni days, in your internship, when you feel like you're feeling a bit alone, unsupported. This is what Pharmacy Down Under is for. You're meant to sort of be that community here. We'll meld our minds together, get those thoughts, those opinions out, have a real discussion and grow from there and make the most out of your pharmacy internship and hopefully launch yourself into a great pharmacy career. Anyways, well, that's it for today. If you liked the video and you want something a little bit similar to this or you want something a little bit different, look, let me know. If you hated the video, let me know too. But otherwise, well, that's all from me then. Have a great weekend. See you guys next time. Bye.